All right, we are back. It's been a minute. I think the last time we chatted, ETH was a reasonable number. I think this is episode 8. But welcome back to Australia. How are you doing? How was your trip? Tell me all.
Thank you. Yeah. Hello, everyone. We've had probably about 3 or 4 weeks, Steve, since we chatted last. So yes, you are tuning into the Ape and Bird NFT show, episode 8. And last time we recorded, I was in Vegas, and I think in episode 6, Steve, we did something from VCon where you mutated your gold ape with an M1 and M2 serum, and that was quite a good show. And I sort of took everyone on the floor for those that saw the live stream at the time. And then we had the Vegas episode a week later, and for a variety of different reasons, me being constantly on the hop with a lot of conferences and moving over to the East Coast of America, where the time zone difference is a little more unfriendlier than the West Coast. So we really couldn't just get a show underway. So we're back at it now. Hopefully, no one thought we were just going to do 6 or 7 shows and then go, the bear market's too hard, and we're packing it in. We like doing this, so we'll hopefully get back into a bit more of a rhythm and pattern. But where do I start? I was away for 6 weeks in total. I feel like I lived 6 years in 6 weeks for a variety of reasons. Everything from just dealing really with my first, true market downturn. We saw the knees started shaking. I think, Steve, before I left, we obviously had an episode where we were talking a little bit about UST and the whole downfall of the Terra ecosystem. And, we've seen sort of cascading events that have happened in the last couple of weeks as well. And, we've seen big downfalls, and it was really difficult, to be honest. I had a wonderful trip, and I'm going to tell you a lot of the positives, but the backdrop of having, your own personal portfolio just essentially get demolished in what seemed like a blink of an eye, I found really mentally challenging. I had a couple of days that were just really tough. Like, all I felt like I was doing was constantly watching a car crash on CoinGecko, watching the price of ETH. And, it wasn't that my conviction in the space had got lost. And I told a lot of people over there, there's sort of these 2 parallel worlds happening at the moment. And one of them is on the sort of collecting and, I suppose, speculation side of things that, there's no doubt about it. I've done really well in sort of 12 to 15 months, and some of it was by accident and luck, and some of it maybe has a little bit of skill in terms of mapping to different people. And, it's probably more on the luck side and the timing side. And that, obviously, when the number is going up, it gives you a huge dopamine rush, right? And, I think for me, that caught my attention. And I have said this to people before, and I know a few people in particular that I've said it to, that, if all of my portfolio went to zero, I would still be curious about this space. Well, that thesis definitely got tested sort of in the last month. But I'm still here, and I'm still curious. Like, I was actually thinking about making breakfast this morning. I thought, geez, life would be a little bit easier at the moment if I just had my regular job and was in my gym routine and just sort of, worrying, like, the weekends, not really worrying about where the income's coming from and da. And then I sort of said to myself, yeah, sure, that'll probably feel good for a week or two. But I know that all the content that I would consume, everything that I would be doing in and around whatever job I had would be Web3. The one thing that this last month or 6 weeks while I've been away has taught me is, there's lots of things that it's taught me, but, I believe in this space. I believe where it's going in the next 5 to 10 years, but it's been a real punch in the mouth and I suppose to sort of like swallow some of the losses that you've had. And you really have to detach from those all-time highs. And, it's quite ironic that, I have the WGMI portfolio tracker, and I remember I bought it maybe back in January, and I know the guy NFT Tomo. He's a Proof Collective member, and it's a great tool, right? It's an excellent tool, and you can filter by a range of different sort of mechanisms, etc. But I very rarely went in there because I didn't want to know what my portfolio was at, and I felt like I would be bringing bad karma on myself if I checked. Well, I remember checking just after the Moonbirds drop, and it was it was a pretty healthy portfolio at the time. And, I feel like to a degree that backfired. But yeah, I think, Steve, back to what we were talking about just around sort of markets dropping, it was on my trip a really difficult time at times where, I was trying to put on a smile and a bit of a front to friends that I hadn't seen for 5, 6, 7 years that I used to live with in the US when I studied overseas. And, they'd be wanting to take me out for meals and do this, that, and the other. And I'm watching sort of, my portfolio lose, 5 figures almost on a daily basis. And, sometimes a little bit more than that. And it was a really hard thing to do because I sort of just wanted an hour or two to myself to think. And, I was tired the whole time. I was drinking a lot over there, just socializing, etc. So it was really hard to find that downtime to actually decompress and think about things logically. So I did make a few decisions over there in the end. They were a little bit too late, but I'm happy with them. I think that I've been sleeping better at night the last couple of weeks because I did make a decision to sell a couple of things and just detach from, like I said, those all-time highs. But look, that was sort of the negative backdrop in terms of the downturn and the velocity of the downturn, but there was a lot of great things as well. I mean, I had a wonderful trip. There's no regrets. I would do it all over again. So that was probably just the negative part of the trip was just dealing with an incredible market downturn. But I'll get onto the positives in a second. But maybe let me pause you can add something.
No, it was great to hear that. And I guess what we're seeing is the disconnect between the price and what's being built at the moment. So price is one whole segment of this. And let's be honest, what drives most people in this space, how high they go, how low they go. But the actual projects, the community, what's being built, that is completely different. And you can have projects that are building amazing things and haven't seen price increases, or projects doing nothing with prices going up. So that disconnect's always been here, but now it's evident for everyone to see. For those watching, you might see my jersey, and if you look, that's what we've all been now. Yeah, I got some jerseys made for NFTeams, some rug jerseys. I'm freezing, so I'm going to put my jumper back on. That was just a 2-minute joke. Also had a haircut, so I've literally had a haircut, and in my net worth as well, I think we've all had a few haircuts there. But yeah, let's first hear about the good parts of your trips, and then we'll get into the market and everything and what I've done as well.
Yeah, so I think, if you listen to episode 6 and 7, you probably heard me talk a little bit about VCon, which I think was, for me, we spoke at length about, Gary, and I would definitely say that I'm personally a fan, and I think he did a really good job of curating speakers. And that was even more evident having gone to Consensus in Austin, Texas, and then NFT NYC, where, I think those are two probably more traditional conferences where, most likely the primary driver from the event organizer is to make some bank. So, you're squeezing in a lot of sponsors, you're squeezing in a lot of speakers. It's probably not as focused on the curation and the education of the topics. There were still a few diamonds in the rough, and I'll speak about sort of some sessions that I thought were sort of the most memorable from both events. But overall, Consensus is more of a traditional crypto conference. I loved it. The one thing I should mention too, Steve, opposed to VCon, was there was a strong contingency of Aussies that were brought over or that came over to both Consensus and NFT NYC. Many did both events. Some just did one or the other. And that was, sort of Steve Vallis from Blockchain Australia. He sort of put together a few Google forms and got everyone together with like big WhatsApp groups and things like that. So the energy from, a contingency of somewhere between, I don't know, probably felt like there was somewhere in the vicinity of 70 to 120 people in these WhatsApp groups. So you could imagine it was buzzing almost all day. You have to sort of put it on silent at times, but that was really good from a sense of, what events are going on tonight and, what sessions are you going to, etc. But I think, VCon, the app was fantastic at VCon in terms of there was 3 or 4 breakout rooms, one centralized stadium. It didn't feel like you had to use a lot of bandwidth to actually work out where your time was best spent. I would say with Consensus and NFT NYC, whilst they were awesome events and I would do them again, it felt like a little overwhelming. Too many venues, too many speakers, too many sessions. There were sessions on that, that most of the sessions at Consensus were 30 minutes. So, you were going from, if you wanted to go to one session, but the other session was at a different venue, you spent 15 to 20 minutes walking to that other venue. So you were sort of having to miss out on sessions that you probably wanted to go to. And there was just too many, right? There's too much choice. And I always think of something, I think I studied it back in uni around like sort of supermarket shelves and having a product, if you've got a product of 15 different soup brands, the likelihood of you actually choosing one is you'll be more likely to walk away because you're overwhelmed by choice than if you just have 3 or 4 brands, because it makes the decision easier. And that's what I would sort of describe. Gary V had the 3 or 4 soup brands, and Consensus and NFT NYC had, infinite brands on the shelf.
So curated compared to just getting everyone who wanted to speak.
100%. And, I think NFT NYC was on the spectrum of just, you have heard the word NFT, so you're in. The irony for me was I was speaking to Harry and Aaron from Divergence that do all of Kevin Rose's, Proof Collective and Moonbird smart contracts. And, I would argue, those two with Richard and, a few others are probably the best Solidity devs in the entire world. And Harry and Aaron are there for the week and not speakers. And I'm just thinking like, this is not good. And I said to Harry, why aren't you speaking? And she said to me at the proof party, we missed the application to speak. And I just thought, you've got some people that were over there from Web2 agencies that were really there to get their 10 minutes of fame. And then they go back and they say, well, we're now a Web3 agency that was invited to speak at NFT. NFT NYC. So that was, and Consensus probably landed somewhere in the middle. Consensus didn't have as many speakers or sessions as NFT NYC, but I still thought there was probably too many. But to sort of defend Consensus as well, they are a traditional crypto conference that are touching on a variety of different topics in crypto and Web3, not just NFTs. And I thought that they did a really good job of incorporating sufficient NFT content. So you could definitely go there as a bit of an NFT nut job like me and get a bit of value out of Consensus. So that Aussie contingency, Steve, having everyone there was really beneficial. And I got to spend some time in particular. We'll probably get 1 or 2 of them on the pod in the upcoming weeks, actually. So, someone like Simon Cant from Reinventure. So for those that are not aware of Simon, he's sort of a leading venture capitalist in sort of the crypto space and did a fund with Westpac, I think back in 2013, and was essentially a Coinbase investor, Steve. So they made a big exit, with Coinbase. And Simon is a very curious mind and someone really well respected in the space. So, getting to spend a bit of time with him and some other characters in the Australian ecosystem that I have known about or have had, sort of smaller relationships with that grew and blossomed, over the last month. So that was really beneficial. To sort of just spend time overseas and go to sessions and go to events of an evening.
Awesome. Now, probably the thing that I saw most on Twitter during the time, and I was never going to go to these events. I've got 3 small kids and a family and a lot of work to do. But all the parties, some looked amazing. 8Fest blew it out of the park near the end there. What else did I see? There was Doodles, Cool Cats, Goblins, Proof, of course. Love to hear about what parties you went to, how they were organized, what was great, what was bad about them, the general feeling of the community, what people talked about at these parties. Were they worried about prices or were they just happy to be there? And so let's hear about all the drinking.
So the Consensus events were a little bit hit and miss for me because obviously, again, traditional crypto conference, I always knew that NFT NYC was really where I was going to shine the most because I'm in a number of, good projects that were putting on big events. So there were a few good ones at Consensus. There was this one at a sort of a quote unquote mansion called Duckverse. There was a few rugs, to be honest, at Consensus. I remember rolling up to this one event that was free to attend, and it was sponsored by, you know, some type of crypto on-ramp, fiat on-ramp or something like that.
Well, they ran out of money.
Yeah, they ran out of money. That was put on Eventbrite as, you know, a view of Austin, Texas, with panoramic views from a rooftop. Now, I got there and I met a few of the Aussie contingency that had already got there, and they said, "Come up," but this is an absolute rug. We were on the fifth floor, I think, of about a 15-story building in essentially a conference room with no panoramic views, and it was the most sort of oversold event that you would see. So, you know, there was a few rugs at the Consensus party. So, although the one on the final night was really good. We had a lot of the Aussies there, and, you know, it was an open bar. Most of these events were open bar, and there was good music and DJ, etc. I can't remember what it was called, but probably the ones that would be most interesting to our audience were the ones at NFT NYC. And the way I sort of describe NFT NYC, I think someone tweeted me last week, and I responded with the following. And I sort of said, well, what would you go to out of the three events? Like, what was the number one event if you had to recommend only one? And the question was two-part. One was from an educational standpoint. One was from a networking perspective. My answer was, from an educational perspective, I thought VCon was the best of the three, right? Like, from a pure education, like what you could extract from that conference and sort of the speakers and the curation of the topics and the speakers. From a networking perspective, I thought NFT NYC was the best for me personally, but I had to prefix that and say, if you were very new to the space and weren't in some of these projects that had notable events, I actually think VCon is still better for the networking perspective, because NFT NYC, similar to Consensus, and there's sort of like this sentiment's the wrong word, but almost, I think a lot of the Americans in the market use these events to meet each other, right? Like, they do business at these particular events, and not a lot of people actually go to many sessions. So if you're new to the space and you got to NFT NYC, yes, sure, you could go to many of these sessions, but I thought that the curation and the topics overall were pretty poor. There were a few, again, that were, like, I'll touch on the ledger sessions in a second, but I think you probably could have learnt more from podcasts and YouTube videos around the space than you would have if you were going for a purely informational perspective. And then the other downside with NFT NYC is if you're not in some of these projects, or you don't have a strong established network and sort of know where the best parties are happening and the best networking is happening, you're probably going to be a bit of a fish out of water. So that was probably my take. But the parties that I attended or events started on, so I spent a week in New York before NFT NYC happened, but on the Sunday, I went to a session. I can't even remember who it was from, but, you know, it was a few speakers. It was like a pool party type of thing, and you had panels coming and going, and it was pretty good. Monday, I actually went to the baseball with the Australian Open crew with Ridley and the team from Run It Wild. Yeah, so we had a suite at the Mets game. It was, you know, it was really good. You know, Ridley actually did a really good job organising multiple events for sort of the Aussie contingency while we were over there, as well as any AO art ball holders, right? So not just for the Aussies, but if you had Americans over there that were at the conference, they could get into many of these events that sort of Team Tennis Australia put on. On Monday night was that was the first, well, Tuesday was actually the first official day with sessions, but Monday night I went to Cyberbrokers. Cyberbrokers put on an outstanding event. It was in a warehouse, sort of in Lower Manhattan. I think I tweeted out a video of the wall mural that they did. Just incredible. Awesome. Yeah.
That would have been a lot of work just on its own.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So Josie was there, Josie Bellini. So for those that know Josie, you know, she's an OG crypto artist, I think, even before the word NFT even existed. Got to speak to her for a while. She was lovely. You know, she made her way around sort of the room. The DJ there was, you know, or the DJs, I should say, played good music all night. The cocktails were sort of in theme with that whole Cyberbrokers ethos. I really, really enjoyed Cyberbrokers. Tuesday, I went to Cooltopia, which is the event that Cool Cats put on. I actually went there during the day. That was more of a day event. It was a very family-friendly event. So, Steve, you mentioned your 3 kids before. If you were to go to a future NFT NYC event, I would say Cooltopia was like, this is a big statement, but like in the context of an NFT event, it was like the mini Disneyland, right? For kids, there was
Awesome.
there was activities there, like video games. There was also activities that you would see at, on like Ninja Warrior and stuff like that, like physical activities where you're, jumping into ball pits and all kinds of stuff like that. And the thing that I liked, some people are critical of this, and I don't know what your take would be, Steve, even thinking about your own project with NFTeams. Cooltopia was open to the public, but it was obviously open to holders as well. And I'm still a Cool Cat holder and a Cool Pet holder. And you got different perks if you're a holder, right? So I skipped the lines, generally speaking, except for the merch line. Yeah. So you were made extra special for being a holder, but it was open to the public so that they could experience this event as well. So what is your take on that particular sort of structure?
Well, we were mentioning this, and at the end of the day, if only people holding the NFT are allowed into any of these communities, you're always stuck. And most of these, we've got 10,000 max of any sort of NFT collection. Of course, you've got extra collections, say with the apes, with their mutants, now with their other deeds, and Artifact have their 20,000 collection. We're going to see 100,000 collections coming up. I believe Doodles are looking to do 2 million. But the thing is, we do need to bring other people that don't own the NFTs into the space as well. So something like that, a real life event, having people be able to come in and see what's being built is great on 2 parts. They might become interested in the project and then buy an NFT, which raises prices for everyone else. And just the fact that they understand the brand, they know the brand, and it just gets the word out there further. So I have no problems. I think it's a great thing that they opened it up to everybody. Of course, you always have to go back to the people who did invest and own an NFT and make sure they're taken care of before everyone else. So being able to skip the line, maybe cheaper merch, other freebies and so on. That's perfect. I think they've done well. But then also going back to what you were saying about all the different conferences, to get into the Gary V one, you did need to own a V friend, which at the time was probably a minimum of $30,000 or $40,000. Yes, you could buy one of the tickets closer to the event, and that might have been about $5,000 or something?
No, the floor actually dropped quite significantly just before, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks. There was actually a big build up because Gary had been sort of saying, like, oh, wait till you see the collaboration with the artist, who ended up being Snowfro. And the irony of that was I felt like 95% of the VFriends community didn't even know who Snowfro was. So again, it probably shows you that not all of the VFriends community, but there's a strong contingency that are very in that Gary echo chamber and are not aware of what's happening outside of that. Yep. So, the floor dropped. I think VCon ticket went something up to like 1.7, maybe even close to 2 ETH at one point. But you could pick up one for probably about 0.2. Even I think I remember seeing a 0.17, and that's when ETH had dropped a bit too. So, you probably could have got one something in the vicinity of 800 to 1,000 USD for the conference ticket. Consensus, I did the VIP pass. I don't know if I would do the VIP pass again, but we got a little bit of a discount through Blockchain Australia. So that cost me about 1,200 Aussie, and NFT NYC was about 500. That was 500 USD, but I bought that many months ago. If you were to buy an NFT NYC ticket the week before the event, I think it was up to about 1,000 or 1,200. So very comparative ticket prices in terms of the VCon ticket. Yeah.
That is extremely expensive if you're going to everything. So you're looking at $3,000 to $4,000 in tickets alone, hotels. I'm guessing on that trip just to go to the conferences, you've spent $20,000 at least, if not more.
Yeah, probably. I think with the conversion, obviously, like USD or AUD to USD, it's probably in that vicinity. That was a number that I had in my head that it would probably cost. I was fortunate. I mean, one of the things that why I did this 6-week trip as well is I have many friends all spread out all around the US that I stayed with in between these conferences. So when you're keeping accommodation costs down, so I only stayed in hotels really for VCon for I stayed 5 or 6 nights.
When you had COVID.
Yeah, picked up COVID as well. I think I probably picked up COVID even maybe. I actually have no idea. I think I potentially, unfortunately, was probably walking around with it for a while, because when I eventually did test positive in Vegas, the only reason I tested myself was there was an old golf employee that works for the LPGA, and I happened to be sitting at a bar with a buddy of mine the first day we got to Vegas and saw that there was an LPGA golf tournament in town. And I texted my friend and said, "Are you here?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, let's catch up for dinner on the Wednesday night." And the Thursday morning, I got a text from her saying I woke up feeling lousy and I've just tested myself and I've got COVID. So I tested myself, and yes, I was positive, and that put a bit of a spanner in the works for my LA trip, or component of the trip, because my friend I was staying with, she hadn't had it before, and I wasn't going to rock up to her doorstep and say, let me take over your spare bedroom while I give you COVID. I thought that's a bit of a stretch, but I actually started testing negative within about 3 days of testing positive. So that, without trying to sound like a scientist here, but from everything I understand, Steve, that probably means that I had it for quite some time beforehand, and I was probably on the back end of sort of having it, given that I was tested sort of negative a couple of days later. But back to my point around sort of staying with friends like that really helped me keep costs down, right? Like let's call it, I think I was overseas for 43, 44 days, and out of those 43, 44, I probably paid for hotels 15, so 1/3 of the trip. So, it keeps it down a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say from everyone that I saw on Twitter, it was 60, 70, maybe 80% got the COVID airdrop from all of these events. They're all making jokes about it. It was either VCon was known as a super spreader. I didn't hear much about Consensus, but NYC NFT seemed to be a massive spreading event.
It is interesting you mentioned Consensus, because I was actually thinking about this on the plane home, because these WhatsApp groups that I was in for Consensus and NFT NYC, there was a lot of Aussies, as I said, that were in there, and a lot of people that were traveling over. And I know a lot of people had some hesitations, and I said, well, I've got it out of the way now with, I felt like in a way it was probably good to get it when I got it, because I went to Texas and New York sort of going, well, I've sort of got a free hit here. I've had my bout. I don't need to worry too much about it. But I don't remember anyone from that WhatsApp group saying that they picked up COVID from Consensus or Austin. And now Texas has got the least amount of measures in place. You'll very rarely see a mask in Texas.
Yeah.
It's like COVID doesn't exist. On the coast, LA and New York, there's still a little bit. There's probably maybe 5-10% of people that are sort of wearing masks consistently, would be my observation. And there's, when you get into an Uber in LA and New York, they still are hitting you up with, you must wear a mask, and didn't always happen. But, in Texas, it wasn't even a consideration. So it's interesting that I was thinking about it. I was like, I really don't remember anyone on Twitter or from our Australian WhatsApp group saying that they got COVID at Consensus. But there was a lot from VCon, obviously, including myself. And then there was a hell of a lot at NFT NYC. So interesting.
Yeah, I'm guessing a key point might be where you drink more, where you're shouting into people's faces more. And maybe Consensus was a bit more laid back, being a more business tech type one as well. But you did mention you're in Texas, and I think you had a story about being near Elon Musk.
Yes. So before I went to Austin, so part of my I don't know if you'd call it holiday component. Probably it was a holiday component. But my friend Gabriella, I used to live with her 14, 15 years ago in LA, and she's worked for SpaceX for close to a decade now. And I remember doing a tour in 2016 in their Hawthorne campus in LA, and she moved 2 or 3 years ago down to South Texas. So this was my first foray into Texas. I'd never been to Texas before, and I went to a place called South Padre Island, and it is at the sort of bottom of Texas, and it's essentially on the border of Mexico. You're in the Gulf of Mexico. And what an incredible place. Like, I would definitely go back again. I felt like I was in some type of tropical island. It was not the caricature of what I thought Texas would be, obviously. And it was just a great time. I stayed there for close to a week before going to Austin. And I did a tour essentially of Starbase is what it's called. So, South Padre Island is where my friend Gabriella lives. That's about a 40-minute drive to where they shoot the rockets from at Starbase. But I really was, introduced to a lot of engineers and, a lot of people that work for Elon and SpaceX that are just hardcore, highly intelligent space nuts. And it was really great. It actually gave me great perspective while, markets were sort of still melting of just like how small we are in the world, right? And, I think, Gabriella's involvement at the moment is she's trying to build out South Padre Island and that whole sort of Starbase facility as a desirable place to attract talent because Elon wants more people down there. And I also saw where Elon lives on site at Starbase. It's probably...
Yeah, I've got an interesting story about that. Was it a tiny square box?
It was a house, but it was tiny. And when I say tiny, it was a run-of-the-mill house. So Gabriella has 2 places. My friend, she has a place at Starbase where, she'll often stay there Monday to Thursday and then go back to South Padre Island where it's a little bit more chilled out. There's a few more amenities and things like that on the weekend. But Elon's place, I took a video of it. It was probably 5 houses up from where I was. So I was spending sometimes during the day just plugging away on my laptop while Gabriella was at work. And Elon's place is just up the street. And it was the most underwhelming sort of, you just wouldn't think that's where, the richest man on earth's house would be. And I said to Gabriella, how often, she's on text with him. Hopefully I'm not saying too much here. Gabriella's listening because she's she's starting to get red pilled into the NFT world after spending a week with me. But she's worked for him for a while and speaks very, very highly of him. Obviously, most of us don't have the privilege of working with him directly, but she said, her words were, he genuinely cares about humanity, and he's obviously wired much different to the normal person. Everyone. And he is a troll on Twitter, and we know that. But she said he's a very caring person and a good person to work for, and is just not materialistic at all. And you saw that from the house that he lives in.
Exactly. So that house, I believe, is a blockable house, which I'm an angel investor in through Jason Calacanis, who's a friend of Elon's as well.
Yes.
So it's good to know that something that I've invested in is being used by Elon. But you're right. He's got a singular purpose, and that is to save humanity. He's trying to get us to Mars, make us multiplanetary. And when you have a goal like that, nothing else really matters. And I'm sure he's at the office, sleeps there all the time. So having a house and look, I'm sure he owns some amazing houses, but when he's in work mode, all you need is 4 walls and you're like an Ethernet connection, and that's it. So, But that's very cool that you were 5 houses down. I would have gone for a couple of strolls. I'm guessing there was no security. He's not known for...
It's a good question you asked. I did ask that question, and the response I got was, it looks like there's no one around. Because I was thinking I was thinking for his safety, right? What if you get a nut job that's sort of Apparently there are a lot of cameras everywhere and there is security, but you just don't see them, right? So,
exactly.
you know,
if they do their job well, you never see it.
Correct. But it was crazy. You know, I was out in Gabriella's backyard and, you know, there's someone mowing the lawns next door and I'm like literally thinking like 3 floors down, 4 doors down. It's just like
Elon the richest man in the world.
Yeah, just in this most unassuming sort of house. So it was an awesome experience. And I got to say, you know, I watched a number of docos on sort of SpaceX. I can't remember the one off the top of my head. I might actually tweet it out, but it was awesome. It was about the trip that they sent the 2 guys, you know, to the International Space Station in 2020 during COVID. Yeah, what a phenomenal documentary.
Look,
so yeah.
I don't get excited by much these days. Over the past maybe 2 or 3 years, every time they've done a test flight of getting that silo up, that was the most exciting thing I've seen in years, like decades even. So I'm so excited about what they're building and what's going to happen and for the future because of him. So yeah, just fantastic.
Yeah, and you will see me in future episodes, Steve. I used
some NASA SpaceX gear, not NASA.
I have a lot of SpaceX gear now. I think I got like 5 hoodies and a bunch of t-shirts, and this is actually a Cool Cats hoodie that I'm wearing at the moment.
Yeah, which looks very cool.
Yeah, but yeah, no, look, the SpaceX experience was amazing. You know, very, very fortunate to do that. And I drove a Tesla for the first time too. So that was a pretty cool experience as well.
Did you drive it or did it drive you?
I would say, yeah, I would say I drove it. But the thing that was most noticeable was when you took your foot off the accelerator, the braking mechanism is quite harsh. Like it's sort of like, you know, I'm used to taking your foot off the accelerator and, you know, you're sort of coming to a red light and you might be a couple of 100 meters out and you sort of progressively slow down. It's almost like hitting the brake when you take your foot off just very, very slightly. And it's something to do with the braking system in a Tesla. So that was probably the most noticeable thing for me that I just wasn't used to, was how quickly the car would pull up after you took your foot off, just even remotely, just like an inch or so. But do you want me to loop back to some of the? I'll just tie a bow on some of these. Yeah. So I was speaking about Cooltopia before we segued into SpaceX and Elon, but as a holder, when I arrived, I had my own, and you had to pre-register. So this wasn't through Token Proof, and I'll talk about Token Proof in a second, but Cool Cat set up their own registration and they said, hey, if you're a Cool Pet, you know, owner or Cool Cat owner, put in your ID, like essentially verify your wallet. So when I arrived, it was pretty cool. My own Cool Cat popped up, the one I used to use for my Twitter PFP before the Moonbird. And, you know, I got this blue wristband, and the blue wristband had some type of chip in it that was actually connected to a Shopify experience, right? So you could go around to these like quote unquote rides or what, you know, activations. You could do the Ninja Warrior type of activity that I was talking about. You could play video games. You could do all these types of events that they had and activations, and you racked up points. You racked up sort of like milk points as you did these activities. Then you could go to the merchandise stand, almost like the old school arcade, you know, time zone, right? And you would scan your wristband, and it was all powered by Shopify, and it would come up with your points balance, and then you could get a hoodie or a t-shirt or and you could pay. And this was one of the exclusive hoodies. I know that if you're just listening to this, you can't see the hoodie that I'm wearing, but this was one of the exclusive hoodies that they had there that you could only get you know, at NFT NYC. They had some more generic merchandise there too. But, you know, I thought it was a really good thing. You know, your kids, I'm sure, would have loved it, Steve. There was a lot of kids running around there. And I came away pretty bullish on Cool Cats, to be honest. I think when you think about the rough 6 months that they've had, you know, with the start of the year, you know, Cool Pets were coming and, you know, all that stuff. And they seem to still have an energy about them. And they do have that sort of kid, family-friendly brand about them. And, you know, they're just continuing to march forward. So I came away as a Cool Cat owner going, geez, you know, I still feel pretty solid about this project. Whether it ever gets back to where it was in terms of price, I don't know, but I feel good about the Cool Cats ecosystem. So that was on Tuesday during the day. I actually ran into Ryan Carson at Cooltopia as well. So I met him for the first time. Much taller than I thought. He'd be probably about 6'5", I reckon, 6'4",
Oh, wow.
6'5". So you don't really pick that up when you're sort of on Zooms. But I had a good chat with Ryan, and then Tuesday night was probably the big night, or actually Tuesday and Thursday night for me. Tuesday night was the Proof Collective Lounge event that started at 6 p.m. And then Moonbirds started at 8 p.m. and Moonbirds was right across the street. Now, you want to talk about sort of like a red carpet experience. It was awesome. Like unfortunately, it was sort of started to rain when we were in line, but ironically, Kevin Rose and Justin, the other co-founder, they went out and bought a bunch of umbrellas for people and started handing them out, in line.
I think I saw a video of food coming out to the line as well.
Yeah. There was the thing that I'm pretty sure it was attached to the Goblin Town project, but someone might correct me if I'm wrong. But there was food vans with Goblin Town burgers and people dressed up as goblins all throughout the
week, a lot of that.
Which was great marketing, right? And they would just come out and just sort of like banter with people in the lines and hand out burgers and all that kind of stuff. So it was good. But the Proof Collective event was awesome. There was a massive Moonbird across the street where the Moonbird entry was, with the fire, which was sort of representative of Kevin Rose's own Moonbird. And I love the Collective Lounge. I got to meet a few people that I have only been interacting with virtually for the last 12 to 15 months. Like Lakos is one that comes to mind. So Lakos is sort of
the luckiest man in NFTs.
Yeah, you could if you're listening, Lakos, I don't think there's any debate about that. So it was good. Seb from Crypto Arte, who a number of artists that I'd seen, like saw Harry and Aaron from Divergence, and it was just I met some new people as well, right? And it's quite funny at these NFT IRL events because
you need to have your Discord name and your real name.
You do, right? So you would say, like, someone would go, "I'm Drew," and I'm like, "Okay, that's good to meet you, Drew."
Hi, Drew.
Who are you in? Who are you in
Twitter
Discord? And it's like, it's like Funky Man 72 NFT guy, and it's like, oh yeah, I know you, Funky Man 72 NFT guy. But yeah, it was a great event, the Proof one, and then I got a few of my friends into the Moonbirds party only because I have multiple Moonbirds, and so I registered some tickets via Token Proof. Which was an app that went down really, really well. They did a phenomenal job, Fonz and the team. I don't think there was too many hiccups with Token Proof. The verification, the dynamic QR code that I think resets every sort of 10 to 15 seconds worked really well.
So it's reading your wallet and making sure it's still in there and redoing the barcode each time.
Correct. So what you do and you might even use it for a future NFTeams event, Steve, is you essentially, you approach Token Proof as a creator and you would say, hey, you got this event coming up at the Australian Open, It's only for holders. And you can then also say, okay, venue capacities, it could be a +1, +2, whatever it's going to be. You get a custom URL, so tokenproof.io or whatever it was, XYZ, /NFTeams. And then you put out through your channels, here's the claim, there's going to be a claim window. So it's going to be from 9 a.m. tomorrow. You need to set up and verify your wallet beforehand. I mean, you can do it during the process, but Token Proof recommends if you're going to use a wallet for a specific NFT event, come in and verify with us that you own that wallet first, and it just sits there. It's still, whenever you're verifying your wallet, I still feel like you sort of have that little bit of heart and mouth moment, like, am I getting scammed here? What am I actually doing? But I got to say, my personal experience with Token Proof was really good. And I did have one hiccup where I think it was actually a hiccup on Token Proof's side where something happened and my proof tickets actually fell off, right? So I'd already claimed my proof tickets, and then I was thinking, because it was sold out, I was thinking, oh no, what has happened here? I emailed Token Proof. I had a response from Fonz within like 3 minutes. He just said, yeah, look, something's happened. We take security very seriously. All you need to do is go back in and just sort of like re-verify your wallet. You haven't lost your tickets. and all of that was true, right? So the tickets were still there. It's just that the verification process needed to be done once again. And it's a great way, right? Like, we're not talking about, I think in episode 6, Steve, I told you that probably the biggest downside of Gary's event app was you had to link your VCon ticket, and most people got their VCon. Well, everyone got their, if you're a VFriends Series 1 holder, you got your your VCon ticket airdrop to that same wallet. So you really needed to do what I did and set up a burner wallet and download MetaMask on your phone, only have the VCon ticket in there, and then connect it to the VCon app. And the VCon app was great, but the downside was if you weren't diligent in your security, you got fleeced for your VFriends, and wallet, someone did with a QR code that I mentioned in episode 6. So token proof allows you to, whether it's 1 week out from the event, 1 month out from the event, whatever the project creator decides, you can do that in your own home, or in a quiet space like you would normally do if you're verifying something, and then you scan the screen with the token proof app on your iPhone, and then you're away, and you don't even need to travel with your NFTs there. Now, a lot of people say you don't need to travel with them, but for me, I was traveling with some because I was away for so long that all of the the NFT NYC stuff was coming down the pipe while I was away.
Yeah, and you need access. But it is a very cool mash of Web 2, Web 3, and we're going to see a lot more of this. And after seeing all the community stuff, how great all those parties looked, I've had this dream for a long time with NFTeams to have a sports bar and everything. And look, right now, that's an impossibility, but in the future, we're really hoping to do that. And what we want to do is give any NFTeams owner discounts or special privileges. So being able to use that barcode, and then when you say, go to pay for your meal or your drink, you just show that barcode, you get your discount, and entry as well. So you'll bypass everything. So it's a fantastic product. And that's the great thing, that it's so early, but it's working well. There are going to be so many apps like this that help out. And the hardest bit of Web3 is it's not really mobile friendly yet. So these sort of interactions between Web 2 and Web 3, we're going to need them for the next few years until phones can hold your wallet securely. There's no doubt that in 2 to 3 years, your iPhone, your Samsung, I think Samsung already does it, but you'll have a wallet on the phone, which is super secure, and then you'll be able to use it that way. But in between, these things like token proof are fantastic.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Do you want me to?
Did you go to any more parties?
Yeah,
did you go
sorry,
to 8fest?
I did go on the Wednesday night. So Wednesday night, I went to an Australian Open event with Ridley and the team. So that was awesome. I went to a Divergence event. So again, Harry and Aaron, I'm a owner of 1 or 2 of their artworks, and that was a good little intimate event for about 40 people. And I also went to an event with Probably Something. So Probably Something is a project that I'm in, ran by natfax.eth. So if you follow natfax.eth on Twitter, again, that was an intimate event for probably 40 people. I got a lot out of that one. I felt like I met some really high-level builders. I mean, Nat's an engineer herself, used to work at Palantir, and she's building out a number of tools. The first one is called Lifeboat, so I'll speak a little bit more on that maybe in the coming weeks and months, Steve. But Wednesday night was a little bit more relaxed than Tuesday. Obviously, Proof and Moonbirds was full on, and I actually went to another event after Moonbirds run by MotorDAO, which was probably a little bit... I'm tired
just hearing all these parties.
It was crazy. But then let me wrap it up. I know there's a lot of parties going on, but 8fest and World of Women with Madonna was Thursday night, right? So that was a really good one. I only got to 8fest with maybe an hour and a half to go because I actually went to the Australian consulate with a contingency of Aussies, and we spoke about crypto and NFTs, which was pretty awesome, to be honest. So yeah, got to 8fest and Snoop was playing. It was awesome to sort of see that. Obviously, Snoop and Eminem dropped a track and a video clip of using their apes and then the IP around their apes, which was pretty cool. And then World of Women with Madonna on Thursday night from, I think that we got there about 10:30 p.m. and it finished maybe about 1:32. And then it all wrapped up on Friday morning with a Australian Open brunch, so in Brooklyn. So it was a week filled with activity, but really loved it. A lot of good relationships formed, and the energy, Steve. I texted you during the event and said, actually, you asked me before, was anyone talking about price? And no, the answer was not. I think everyone that was there at NFT NYC, at least that I interacted with, knows where this space is going. We don't know the exact path, and we're obviously experiencing some bumps in the road right now. But the people that I interacted with, there's just I wouldn't even call it bullish. There's almost just a level of this is happening. It's just how quickly will it happen? And it's on us, the people that are in the space, to drive the thing forwards.
Exactly. Awesome. Sounds like a blast. I'm hoping next year I get to them. Yeah, so we'll see how we go there. All right, let's move on. That was a good 50 minutes of catching up.
Yeah. I think it was always going to be like this after 3 or 4 weeks. So I don't know if you have to run it at a hard stop at 11 or not. But
we'll try to get through our talking points here. So we're going to talk about the markets in general. Before we do that, of course, not financial advice. We're idiots. Don't listen to anything we have to say.
I've got the official one here if you want. Here's our official disclaimer. The hosts discuss all topics and products on the show for entertainment and educational purposes only. From time to time, the hosts, that's us, will refer to NFTs, products, protocols, and other items by way of example, but this is not to be construed as endorsement or advice. You are responsible for doing your own research and seeking your own independent and professional legal, tax, financial, and accounting advice with respect to any investments or activities with digital assets and NFTs. Isn't that a mouthful?
I just managed to make a whole 10K project and sell it out during that speech. So let's get to the markets. The last time we did talk, ETH had fallen to about 1,800, and we were talking about how this big four was really bad and everything. And I had said I don't think that's the bottom. I thought we're in a bit more pain. Sad to say, I think we're still in for a bit more pain. I don't know what's happened in the last 6 weeks since we talked. We did have Terra go down, Terra Luna, and now we're starting to see everything cascade. So 3AC, which was a venture capital firm, they were huge. They had, I think, $3 billion worth of funds under management. Terra pretty much ruined them, and apparently they were highly leveraged, which for a VC firm and a lot of other companies in the space is just ridiculous. So they're pretty much gone. That then impacted BlockFi, Celsius, Nexo, a heap of other companies. And of course, as all these companies need to liquidate everyone, price, of course, goes down. I just saw this morning, FTX bought BlockFi for $25 million, but all up, I think it's $275 million, as they had given them a $250 million line of credit, which probably got exhausted. And BlockFi's last funding round was actually at $4.5 billion. So I think that's just like all crypto tokens, it's a 90-something% write down on the business. And we had a huge number of big investors in the space investing in BlockFi. I did have the option to invest probably a year and a half ago. No, it would have been start of 2021. So yeah, a year and a half ago. Luckily, I didn't. So I saved that money. But I have invested in a few Web3 companies, and of course, the valuations at the time were, looking back, ridiculous. So they would all be underwater or worthless now. I had talked before about never using leverage, and when we talked about Terra and Luna, I had said that I hadn't used them, but I had used BlockFi. So once I started realizing the contagion and what was going to happen here, I was trying to get I've got a small percentage of my Bitcoin, ETH, and so on in BlockFi, but it is a significant amount of money, even though it's a small percent. So I was like, all right, I'm out. I don't need this percentage anymore. I want to get it out. Went to BlockFi, logged in. Then there was a 7-day wait period to add wallets and to allow certain things. So I had to sit there for a whole week looking at the news, knowing that they were probably in a lot of trouble before I could even initiate the withdrawal. So the week was up. I initiated the withdrawal I had USDC, Bitcoin, and ETH in there. Luckily, the next morning, they had sent it to my wallets. And then I saw that morning as well a tweet that FTX had given them that $250 million credit line. So that was very lucky. BlockFi is probably going to be fine now with FTX backing it. Sam and Alameda, they're going to own everything after this purge. Binance might have a chance to buy some stuff. I know Coinbase are trying to buy some other things, but it's going to be like your regular CeFi where there's a couple of monopolies. It's going to be Coinbase, Binance, FTX owning the entire industry, which is not a good thing. It's going to stifle innovation when all these big companies just buy up everything. They're going to be like the next Googles, Apples, and any big company that shows that they've got some traction are just going to be bought out. I think we saw that was it Genie that got bought by Uniswap?
That's correct, yeah.
Look, Token Proof is going to be bought by one of these companies. OpenSea is probably another one that is going to start buying up a lot. So, yeah, we're in that stage of these big companies are really going to assert themselves over the next year or two and just buy up every single infrastructure play they see. We just hope Web3 being what it is, well, what we hope it's going to be, and just hopefully some builders can build their own open source products that can compete against all these big guys now. But yeah, we also had the end of our tax year yesterday. So we're very, in essence, I'm very lucky that this drop happened when it did. I would have had a big tax bill. I didn't sell many NFTs, but I did sell a few for pretty good profit. And I would have had a huge tax bill based on that. Luckily, the price went down. I've managed to tax loss harvest a lot. And again, Greg said, not financial advice, but I went to burn 500 NFTs that had all gone from, my initial buy would have been 0.08 when ETH was maybe $4,000. So each one, what's that, like $300 to $400 US per one. They've all gone to 0.01 or 0.001. So in my mind, they were worthless. But the tax advice I got was if I held them in my wallet, I couldn't claim a loss. So it was best to burn them. But then I was talking to my mates and one of them said, well, can I just buy them off you for 1 cent? And this was fine as well. So I ended up doing individual sales to him and he bought them for $1 and it helped me save on gas fees. He ended up paying about an ETH and a bit in gas fees to buy all these NFTs. But so that was good. I also managed to convert ETH to WBTC to take the loss on the ETH. So now I'm going to use, I think it's my crypto tax calculator, an Australian piece
CryptoTaxCalculator.io.
That could be the one. Binance had a YouTube video with the creators and they gave some pretty good advice. It's not great, but it's probably the best in the market at the moment. I'm going to have to go through thousands of buys, sells, and mark each one, but it needs to be done. I should have been doing it throughout the year, and at least now, it might take me a month to sort out last year, but going forward, I'll be able to add them as they happen. So yeah, I just think we're in a stage where we haven't seen the worst of it. We've seen a lot of companies go under, but I think there's more companies to come that are probably, the saying is swimming naked. So I'm not buying at the moment. I'm just waiting. And I've had a lot of friends who have asked, like, is this a good time to buy? And I'm saying, look, it's a great time if your hold period is a decade. But you would still have to think that a 50% crash could happen from these buys. But yeah, so my plan is now stay alive. I think you were going to ask, how do I feel about my own portfolio? I've got a little list. So yeah, I've lost a lot in, like, I've still got the same amount of ETH, but if you convert it back to Australian dollars, of course, we've all lost a lot. What I do, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I always compartmentalize each of my investments. So stocks are one thing, crypto's another, angel invest in businesses, so on. So I can just leave certain things. So stocks, I never think about now. I know they're on autopilot. I know they'll go up and down. And once I got into crypto, I used to look at my stock portfolio daily, even probably hourly while markets were open. As soon as I got into crypto, I completely forgot about the stocks. It was fantastic. Crypto, I then would look every 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the prices. That's then gone to maybe every hour. And now it's maybe twice a day, I'll look at prices. So if I can concentrate on other things, and the great thing is I've got NFTeams, which I'm building, everything else I know is on autopilot. It's fine. It doesn't need my interaction. So I can sort of just leave it. And in saying that, I, like you, have been extremely lucky with timing, with getting into a few projects that took off. So I did have a look the other day because it was end of financial year. I have a little bit more ETH than I started with, which is fantastic. And I have a portfolio that could be a couple of thousand ETH if I could sell them. So I'm more than happy to sit on all of that, wait it out for what I think is going to be a number of years. I'm thinking 2 years before we actually see things come back. And blue chips seem to be quite solid. So your apes, your artifact, there isn't all that many CryptoPunks. There's probably 5.
Moonbirds are holding up well.
Moonbirds are also holding up, and it is a case of who is in the community there. So you've got entrepreneurs that can afford to hold. Of course, ape holders have been given so much money through airdrops and everything that they can afford to hold. So yeah, I think blue chips will do fine. And it's great to know that I hold some of those. And if I ever do need to sell, I can. But yeah, I've always tried to have a buffer of cash as well to always last a 2-year cycle out of everything. So yeah, it sucks. It's not fun when markets crash. I've been through, this will be my 3rd or 4th, I can't even remember now. And I remember the last one. So 18, 19, 20 were just very quiet years for crypto. And it was boring. And I stupidly just didn't build during it because I didn't know what to build. I didn't know about NFTs at the time. And it was okay because it was sort of a mini retirement for me. But at least this time I've got a purpose and I know I'll be building NFTeams through that. And that leads on to what I'm doing with NFTeams. The problem is, I guess we can talk about the general market. Nothing's selling at the moment. Any drops, they're not selling out. All mid-tier and below projects will be going down or staying about the same ETH price. But of course, the Australian and US dollar price are going down. But yeah, I'm just going to keep building. There's no point in releasing anything at the moment. So we've got a player drop. We've got a jersey drop. You can see in the background, ZipMax, one of our sponsors on jerseys. There's a jersey I've got tested as well. But we'll release the jerseys because they're free. And there's a lot of manual work of putting logos and so on. So we can get through that over the next few months. And then players, which are almost ready. we're just going to hold them. It hurts me because I really want to show off some of the... I've told people I've been showing off the human characters, but that's only a very small part of the players. And some of the characters that we've created are just amazing. And I want to show them off, but there is almost no point in showing them off at the moment because hype cycles die very quickly in this space. So I have to know that I'm going to be putting these up to mint in a month period and get that hype cycle going just for that month. So it sucks that I'm going to hold everything back for a while until the market returns. I'm hoping we see a slight uptick around October, November, but it might be a case of waiting until 2023 before we release them. And that'll give us time to build out other things. I saw a few projects did say they did convert all of their ETH funding into US dollars. Those projects are the ones that I'll probably look to buy their NFTs if they dip more, because if they've got that funding, they can build in this downtime. I was a bit more stupid. I did convert enough to get through a year, but I did leave a big chunk in ETH, and our community fund is in ETH as well. But again, we've got enough to keep building at a slower pace. The idea was that this player drop would be able to be our springboard. So I'd be able to hire the 8 to 10 employees I needed to really build out what we were going to build. But there's nothing to say we can't build those MVP proof of works with the small team we've got. But yeah, so we're going to, at the moment, we're looking for sponsors for the jerseys. So if you have a company that wants to be on NFTeams jerseys that are going to be in the metaverse, hit me up. We're going to keep working on the players. We're doing all the 2D designs of the 3D. So we've got t-shirts, hoodies, hats, undies. We're looking for any company that wants to get their brand on an NFT. So a player is going to have, potentially can have a hat. So we've got a hat company that if you get their hat, they're going to send you the hat as well. So we're looking for undies companies that if you get their undies on your player, they'll send you a pair of those undies. I'm getting shirts made. But yeah, so we want to make this a little bit cool of, you're not only going to get the NFT, you're going to get the 3D file so you can walk around metaverses. You've got the potential to get an item, piece of clothing sent to you for free. And we're going to have a few other surprises as well. So lots of fun to come with NFTeams, and we continue to run the tournaments every single week. So round 1, for those listening, is open now. You've got until tomorrow midday Australian time to get your tips in. We're still giving away the $10,000 a month there. We may need to restructure based on the price of ETH, how much the prize pool is going to be. But at the moment, we've got 10,000 for tournament 1 and 5,000 for tournament 2. So we're giving away $15,000 a month. And at current prices, we've still got 3 years to give away that community fund. We've got a Bitcoin team in the final this week. So we've got round 1, but also the June final. And if that team wins and he's up against 7 others, he'll not only win 8,000 first prize, but a Bitcoin. So not as much as it was initially, but I think Bitcoin's about 25, 30,000 Aussie. So he'll win close to $40,000 if he wins this tournament. But yeah, there's my spiel. Buy an NFT. I'll be here for the next decade. So I think it's a great price point at the moment. I think they're about 0.15 floor, and floor team, any team's going to give you the ability to get a player, and I think you'll be blown away by what we do with the players.
Exciting times. How many players, or you can't reveal that?
So this drop is going to be 10,000 players. So
Yep.
Every NFT owner can claim one or draft one, as I'm saying. I expect maybe 4,000 to 5,000 to be claimed by current owners. And then the other 5,000, we're going to have whitelists. We're going to have tournaments on our site that will grant you whitelist if you do certain things. So we're going to try some different stuff with the whitelist there. we will do what I hate and do the giveaways on Twitter to grow the Twitter and everything. We've got just over 10,000 Twitter followers, but the difference between us having 10,000 and another NFT project having 100,000, you just see it in the interaction. So any tweet of ours will get 50 to 100 plus likes, comments, so on. Then you look at all these other projects that have 100, 200,000. They put out a tweet, they get 5 likes. So you know there's bots and fake accounts and everything following these. So yeah, the question is, do we go down that route of giveaways, which then you get a lot of followers, but mostly bot followers, and your interaction dries up? But we had a conversation with my social media guy. We're happy building really slow. Over the last 2 months, we probably went from 9,000 to 10,200. But we know they're real people joining who are interested. So I think one person who's actually interested is worth 1,000 and 10,000 bots that is just there to flip or try to win a prize. So yeah, 10,000 initially. That would give us enough to build for 2 to 3 years with a big team. Like, we can get a lot done with that drop, depending on the price of ETH, of course. I was assuming we'll take in about $2 million there, Aussie. But then each team, we're trying to build a sporting universe, and there was going to be an app that came with the players, and you'll be able to train your players. But this is how we wanted, and going back to your whole Cooltopia interaction thing where anyone could come in, we want anyone to be able to train their own player that's not an NFT. So they'll be able to come in, get the NFTeams app, create a player. It's not an NFT, but they can train it. We'll probably use that player in the game as an AI or a non-playing player type thing, because each team's going to need 5 players eventually. But then there'll be an option to convert it to an NFT. But it's more about getting them in, showing them how fun these games are, showing them the whole ecosystem, and that's how we hope to bring in more people. But then there will be a second drop of 10,000, and then all of that money would go into the prize pool. So the idea is, after that second drop, we start the game for real, and then we can probably offer $100,000 in prizes a month. So yeah, that's the idea, but that's probably a year to a year and a half away where the second player drop is. Because again, you don't want to dilute the collection too much, but in 5 years time, I hope there's 50,000 players. Each team has 5 players, and we've got 100,000 or more given away every month. And each month will be a new season. So that's the general roadmap that we're working towards.
Exciting times. And you mentioned crypto tax calculator before, Steve. The founder, Shane Brunette, I think that's how I pronounce his last name, and also Patrick McGimpsey, he's their customer success manager. I spent a bit of time with both of those individuals, one at Consensus and one at in New York. So those guys actually are willing to come on the show. So I actually spoke to them about the Ape and Bird NFT show. So whether we get both of them or one of them, so given the timeliness of all things tax happening and just a lot of the ambiguity and just needing a tool like this, I think even in their words, they describe it as it's a beta product at the moment. I think it is the best of the bunch of what I've seen. I'm a user as well. So maybe in the next week or two, Steve, we invite Shane and or Patrick come on to tell us a little bit more, and also just to run us through it. How do you optimize their product, and how are they thinking about things? So they might hate me for this.
But CoinJar had sent out an email, and they had also mentioned the company and had a 40% off code. So if you are thinking, I've been waiting to buy it in this new financial year. I think it's like $250. But I thought, well, if I buy it in this new financial year, I can use it for next financial year too. But there is a code for 40% off until the end of July 15th. Just write CoinJar40 in the promo code, and yeah, you'll get 40% off that product. But we'll see. Maybe they'll even give another code when they come on this podcast.
I know you've spoiled. Maybe they give the special listeners of the Ape and Bird NFT show a discount.
Well, we'll ask for 50% off.
No, that's fine. We should mention a few things just to wrap up. Just we probably won't dive too deep into these particular topics, but almost some honourable mentions of just sort of what we've seen coming down the pipe in the last couple of weeks. So we had the Tag Heuer watch, which is essentially, it's just integrating NFTs. We know that Apple Watches, you can already do that, and people are, utilizing that with some of their most valued NFTs on their wrists. But I thought that was interesting that Tag Heuer has, from their main account too. So we have to remember some of these established incumbent brands that have big traditional audiences
is seen as higher end.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's still bullish, that the fact that, internally at Tag, even during a bear market, they're still going out with, hey, here's an example of, and the videos are quite well done. Here's an ape, here's a doodle, here's a moonbird, etc. So saw that, wanted to give that a mention. The Adidas, we are going to make it United squiggle jersey. Yes. So Adidas tweeting from I think it was the Adidas football account.
Yes, it was.
Steve.
Yeah. So
but that still has a huge following.
Yeah, they're doing the kit for. Is it Crawley Town? Is that the team that's Wagme United now? I think that's who they bought. Yeah, so all of these sort of DAOs, I'm not sure if it was a DAO or not, but we've had a few already. So Futera, who don't get enough credit, they had Futera United. They set up a team from scratch. They've got their own training facilities. They ran trials where people that own the NFT could choose who was going to play for the team. You can log in and watch the games. I think it's based in Thailand. But yeah, so Futera was one of the first that did this. And the amazing thing was, Futera had this idea, I think it was 2013 they tried it, where without any sort of crypto, but you could log in and vote on what the team did. So they're redoing it now with an NFT as your token. Sadly, it just didn't get enough press or bad timing or whatever. I think they only sold like 800 to 1,000 of the 10,000 NFTs. But they still built out the whole facility. They've got the team. I think the team's actually flying in the league. They may be first or second. Gary V's company is at 137.
Yeah, 1:37 p.m. Yeah. Yeah,
so they're the official sponsor of that team. But look, Adidas and Wagme are taking it to the next level. I think this is it the second division in the English league?
Yeah.
It's either second or third, which is like 2 or 3 under the Premier League. And Crawley, if it is Crawley Town, have been going up over
Crawley.
the last few years.
I've got it here. Yeah.
So in my betting days, I used to bet all the way down to like 4th or 5th league English soccer. So I know all these teams. Yeah, I know.
Absolute DJ.
My favourite team, of course, was Stevenage. But I used to live in the UK as well. I lived in Taunton, who was a very low league team, but there was Yeovil and all these other teams. So I used to love tracking all these teams. But Crawley has been making their way up over the seasons. And the beauty of that English structure is you can take a no-name team. And of course, I'm sure all of our favourite shows, Ted Lasso, shows how Richmond FC had been going up, and this final season they're in the Premier League. But it's a dream, and if they can get enough funding, I don't know who's funded it, how much money they've got, but to be able to buy Crawley, you would need a few million. So it's just going to be an interesting watch. Of course, we've just seen they've got a devil character, so we know there's going to be a 10k drop of those characters to fund. Who knows if we'll get voting rights and everything, but getting Adidas on board, fantastic. And having that squiggle jersey, it is an awesome jersey. Yeah. It's just cool to watch. I'm excited for it, and it is going to be the future of a lot of sports teams. We did talk about trying to buy an NBL team with a few guys. In Australia, NBL teams are fairly cheap still. They don't make much money, so you could buy one for 5 mil pretty much. And that doesn't seem like all that much when you can get 10,000 people investing in it. But there's been a number of DAOs trying to buy NBA teams and so on, which is a lot harder to do. But it's exciting that we can use this technology for something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple of other things in the sport, staying on the sporting theme, we saw a deal with Binance and Cristiano Ronaldo. Around that one's going to be interesting.
It's on B chain, isn't it? Binance
yes,
chain.
I believe so. Yeah,
I don't think Ronaldo even knew what words he was saying. To be honest, this would be a case of here's $10 million. Read this script. But I know it's around the World Cup. They're going to be dropping some NFTs. Look, any NFT not on ETH, even Solana. Like, I know we've probably got some Solana guys here, but Binance Chain NFT, yeah. Like, it will drive. The great thing is he's got who knows how many 100 million followers. So I'm probably a bit too negative on this sort of stuff when it's on other chains, but he's going to bring in a lot of people that it will at least understand what an NFT is and custody. So that's great. I just, wish it was an ETH-based project.
Yeah, well, we've also got Wimbledon. So I know I haven't dove into this one too much, but the AO Upall project, I think there's 50 spots or something up for grabs. So if you own an AO Art Ball, if you head to their Discord, you can get a link for a pre-mint sign up to potentially mint that. I did see that. I think they're going to charge it in. Well, it's an ETH.
£500.
Yeah, £500. So what are we looking at? Is that about 1,000 Australian these days, or even more?
Yeah, 800.
Yeah. So it's, in this market, it's reasonably high, you would say, but 1,000 quantities. So a little bit different to what the AO did with their 6,776 on the initial drop. So, tennis fan, maybe check out the Wimbledon one, and then two other ones from a celebrity.
We'll talk about how AO and what they're doing, because I think Ridley announced that anyone that holds a current AO ball for the next Australian Open is going to get the 2023 AO ball. So they're going from 6,667 to more, maybe 10,000, I'm guessing, and then
they're increasing the supply by about 2,000. Yeah.
Okay, and it's going to be the same idea though, but they'll cut the cord up a little bit more. But that's fantastic to give back to current owners, and I think he said they were going to be free tickets for holders and so on. So I think out of all of them, AO has done the best job of any sporting organisation. I saw the French Open one. I have no idea if that even sold one or two. I think I don't know how that went. We do have the AFL Mint coming out soon. I did put a tweet up the other day that sort of disappointed in all these sporting brands and organisations in how they're looking at NFTs and seeing it as a profit center instead of a marketing cost. But I guess we're both sports guys. You worked for Golf Australia, didn't you, for a number of years?
Yeah, and previously in basketball.
Wow. So, look, if any sporting organisation in Australia wants to talk about doing something properly, I will give my time. I think, Greg, you have your own company set up, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So talk to us. We'll help you out. Guys that are in this space know how it works, have created things before. Talk to us. I know there are a number of, I can't mention teams or anything, but one team went down the route, and you mentioned before that all these Web2 companies go to NYC. Now I'm a Web3 company. So a big team in Australian sport went with one of these Web2, now Web3 companies, and they know they've made a huge error. But yeah, like I meant to have a talk with the guy coming up. But yeah, if you're running anything for any sporting team and want some help, just reach out. We've got a couple ideas that we think could really work. So talk to us. So sorry.
I always look at it from this perspective, Steve, and I know what the internal politics is like within sporting organisations, and that can often be the big issue. But I think what Tennis Australia and Ridley's done really well, and I said this to Ridley, I spent a lot of time with him in New York, is they came to the Australian consulate. Ridley was there with a couple of his team, and the whole team from Run It Wild, Adam Decatur and Sarah and Sarah May. They're great, right? They're great operators. Adam's really, I would say, is really, really deep in the space. He's been driving that forwards with Ridley, and they've got plans. They didn't not only announce plans at NFT NYC for 2023, but also for 2024 and 2025. Like, they are really thinking about this project long term. And yes, Ridley obviously has a mandate to make sure that this project sticks within a budget. And, I know that I think Ridley converted, you were talking about whether you converted for NFTeams to USDC or to fiat, off their drop. So I think they did a reasonable job there. But Ridley obviously does have a mandate to make sure that it's sort of like cost neutral, I suppose, at worst case scenario. But if you are looking at this through the lens of just extracting more value so that you can put a little bit more on the balance sheet and get an extra A+ on your performance review, right? Yes, that might help you, in the short term, but there's a real reputational risk to all of this. We know the blockchain is forever. And the way that I would think about it too is when Facebook pages came along and when the start of social media came along, right? For sporting brands, it was a little bit easier because you do have a natural tendency for audiences and fans to want to, engage with that. But for incumbent brands and, even Tag Heuer, who we were talking about before, when all these incumbent brands were entering Web 2 and the social media era, they were awkward, they were clunky, they didn't really know what they were doing. And that's what we're seeing now in the transition to Web 3 or Web 2.5, whatever you want to call it, is if you come in and you don't have anyone that understands the culture and how to get cut through and how to get adoption within that community, you are going to look like a bit of a fake and a bit of a phony, and there's a real reputational risk there. So my thing is always like, and I have to remind myself on a daily basis too, particularly during this bear market, is I'm like, okay, I believe in this space in the long term, but it is going to happen slower than we think, right? Like, it's going to take longer than we think, but it'll also take quicker than we think. And I know that's a contradiction, but, if this bear market has taught us anything, it's like, okay, there's all the non-believers are back out from the woodwork now, right? So, and it's the same thing that happened with Web 1 and the same thing that happened with Web 2, and now we're experiencing it in Web 3. And I think, again, I don't want to spend too much time pumping up Ridley, but what I said to him was, Ridley attended the Australian consulate with some really prominent crypto and blockchain figures in the Australian ecosystem. It was a curated list of about 50 or 60 people by Blockchain Australia. And there was camaraderie, right, between those 50 or 60 people. Ridley was offering different things to the Aussies in New York, come to our brunch, come to this, come to that. The AO Metaverse project, or the AO Art Ball project, is adopted within the community now, right? Like, it's something that the Australian community, blockchain and broader crypto community has adopted. And I don't know if you can say that for too many of the other sports at this stage. So I say credit to Ridley and credit to Tennis Australia and the Run It Wild team for actually doing it the right way, because that's going to pay off in spades, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, in the coming years, right? Like, they are building for the long term. And even though only maybe 1%, 2% of Oz Open fans actually know or care about it at the moment, that is going to incrementally build. And I think that's important. So, well done to those guys. So, two other things as we wrap up, Steve, segueing from sports to celebrities. Hugh Jackman, and shout out to my mum who actually sent me this article yesterday. How good's that?
Of course you did. It's Hugh Jackman.
I've got my mum sending me NFT resources, so thank you, Mum. But Hugh Jackman has come out. This was an article in The Age by Dominic Powell, who I believe wrote the article for you, Steve, that signaled the top. So shout out to
signaled my top.
Yeah. Look, Hugh Jackman has invested with Bernard Fanning around
awesome.
around music NFTs. So it's going to be an Aussie music marketplace. I think it's on Polygon. I'm just trying to bring up I skim read it yesterday, but ultimately, music NFTs is actually something that I'm starting to really get into, Steve. I've sort of on a lot of those long plane rides I had during my trip, I really went down the rabbit hole around like what the music industry is going to look like. And I think there's a number of things we can get into in a future episode, but ultimately I think, there's sort of that collector, people still buy vinyls, right? Like if you, so that's what I think, from a collectability standpoint, you might have 500 or 1,000 hardcore super fans that want to buy your NFT collectible because you can then flex that or show your fandom of that particular musician or band through the NFT. But also it's the unlocks too, right? Like the VIP sort of access.
Tickets and everything.
Exactly. And then we even saw... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. The other thing that is a big industry is samples and beats. So being able to buy a sample or beat as an NFT and then show that you own that will be a big thing. I would like to learn more about music NFTs. So teach me, please.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And we even saw the Chainsmokers in the last week. So the Chainsmokers have released, I don't know what the quantity is, but let's just call it 1,000 or 2,000. And these were given out. I believe they were given out, and apologies, I haven't done my full research on this. I just saw a couple of tweets, but people receive them from, super fans essentially that have bought merchandise recently, that have attended concerts and things like that. So they were rewarded with an NFT. And for the Chainsmokers, it's either a new album or a song. 1% of total streaming revenue is going to go back and be distributed to those 1,000 or 2,000 NFT holders. So you're now looking at...
that's like 3 cents.
It could be, right? It could be. But from someone like Chainsmokers, maybe a little bit more. If we're talking about a non-established artist, that's obviously a little bit of a different kettle of fish. But I think music NFTs... they're not as visual, right? I even heard Cooper Trooper talking about this on a recent episode with Carly Riley on Overpriced JPEGs. Is you can skim read or visually read OpenSea and have a look at what's in front of you in half a second, right? With music, you actually do have to take the time to sort of listen to it. So the speed and velocity of the adoption of music NFTs hasn't taken off as quickly as PFPs or art or whatever, but I think it is coming, and it's something that I'm starting to spend more and more time on. So I think, maybe let's have a good sort of powwow about that in a future episode. And then finally, you might want to just...
Fun fact about the music industry. So I'm old enough to be around when MP3s were the new thing. So I had gone from a kid of buying CDs, and I still remember going to buy a single for $8, like a Smashing Pumpkins or Oasis single, and used to love having the CD. But then when I was probably 18, 19, MP3s came along. One of the first sites I ever made was called Egasm, which was an MP3 site. I would spend probably 3 days uploading these 3 meg files through a dial-up internet, and then everyone could download the top 50. That site paid for my uni degree with all the ads on it. And to this day, this is early 2000, or 99, 2000, it was getting like 20,000 visits a day because it was one of the only MP3 sites out there, and a Wares site, which was all the software, illegal software you could download, would link to my site for MP3s. But yeah, that was the last big change to the industry, and MP3s and digital music is what brought this whole change, what brought Spotify, put a lot more control into musicians' hands. But they've slowly been given that control back to all these big companies again with streaming rights. Hopefully there is something that can be done with NFTs that puts full control back to the bands. Yeah, absolutely. I think there was actually a really good, I'm going to actually tweet this out. So if you're listening, I will tweet this out. There's a recording of it. The two best sessions for NFT NYC were run by Ledger. So they did a side event.
ironically, I don't even think you needed the NFT NYC conference pass for these side events. But one of them was a music NFT panel, and you had Mike Shinoda from Linkin Park and Fort Minor on there. You had Jeff Nicholas. You had someone from Warner Music. You had Toki Monster, who's a famous sort of DJ on the scene, and they were all chopping up around sort of music NFTs. And that particular session was recorded and put on YouTube and Twitter. So let me tweet out a link, because I thought that was a really interesting one. And it was interesting to listen to the female representative from Warner Music talk about how they're thinking about it at Warner too, like not burying that in the sand, but knowing that this is going to be a massive
They probably
disruptor,
learned their lesson last time.
Correct. So that was a really good session. So let me tweet that out for our listeners. The last thing I was going to say, Steve, was maybe you want to wrap this one up, but we also saw a couple of tweets from Kevin Hart in the last couple of days, but it seems like it was the standard playbook. Do you know what happened after the tweet? Or
So yeah, we did see the Kevin Hart tweet. I'm interested in NFTs. Actually, we saw Anthony Hopkins as well a couple of weeks ago, and his has been interesting. But again, Kevin Hart, this one's guaranteed. He'll open a Discord. I think it's already happened, actually. Discord's now open. Give it another week. We're going to have the Kevin Hart drop. That'll sell out. Give it a week after that. We'll never hear from Kevin Hart and NFTs again. It's going to keep happening. But the great thing is, again, look, they'll take their couple of million. They'll onboard some people. 90% will be pissed that what they bought is worth zero. 10% will find the whole space interesting. 5% will stay. Just got to keep repeating that over the years.
So maybe I started off as a little bit pessimistic with all the markets, but I'm going to leave on more of an optimistic note. I actually think Kevin Hart is one of those celebs, and I could be very wrong, but I've heard him on multiple long-form podcasts, and he's a very deep thinker and I would say astute businessman. I think, and this is obviously not financial advice, and I don't think I'm going to buy one of his NFTs because I've pumped the brakes, but I would be much more comfortable with Kevin Hart's NFT than many other celebrities. I don't actually think he will leave. I don't think he'll leave his fan base high and dry. So whatever that means, that doesn't necessarily mean the price is going to quadruple or 5x or 10x, but I actually think Kevin Hart will be quite thoughtful about adding value to his token holders. So there you go.
Interesting. I think by far the greatest celeb that this space has at the moment is Snoop. Initially, and again, this could be a Kevin Hart thing, he came in, there were a heap of drops. We had sandbox drops, we had... look, he's dropped a lot, and a lot has gone down in value. I did buy one of his music NFTs, actually, with the ape. But he has onboarded so many people. You see his passion for the space. You see his love for his ape. You know he's building... I think there's a...
Dr. Bombay.
Brand. Dr. Bombay, yep.
Ice cream, there was Dr. Bombay ice cream at Ape Fest.
It's amazing. And, of course, the track with Eminem with the apes in there, he has been absolutely amazing. And, in all honesty, at the start, I thought another cash grab. So, I'm always wrong, and that's why none of this is financial advice. So, Kevin Hart... should prove me wrong.
I am bullish on Kevin Hart.
You're bullish on Kevin Hart.
But no, I agree with you with Snoop, and I think I already touched on this in our Vegas episode in a couple of weeks ago. Snoop was a speaker on the final day of VCon, and on the stage was his son, Champ, and then also his manager, Nick Elder, who I really, really enjoyed listening speak. And I got to say, and I had two Aussie friends that were with me that are relatively new to the NFT space, and we were all blown away by how thoughtful and articulate Snoop was around NFTs and Web3. And I'm not just saying that, right? Like I, for whatever reason, thought that it was going to be his manager carrying the conversation. Snoop is in this space, right? Like whether he's tweeting absolutely everything off his account is another story, but there is no doubt in my mind, having listened to him on stage with Gary Vee for an hour, speak about the space, that he is a firm believer of the space, and what he is building, he has significant input with his team. So I couldn't agree with you more there around Snoop and sort of a celebrity that is adding to the space.
Awesome. Well, great to end on some good news. We're going to be here during the Bear and this winter. Lucky it coincides with our Australian winter. We'll be back next week with, I'm sure, a lot more to talk about. Welcome back to Australia, and we will see everybody next week.
Thanks, everyone.